Welcome back to the Media7 Election Special with Linda Clark, Lila Harry and Deborah Collington. There is every likelihood that the next 3 years will be pivotal for the Māori Party. It may yet even choose the next government. Simon Pound headed north to find out what makes the party's most forthright MP, Hone Harawira, tick.
It's just before 6 a.m. in Kaitaia. Today is the start of Hone Harawira's election campaign. We're off to Te Rerenga Wairoa, Cape Reinga, for the official launch. Both Dame Whina Cooper's Land March and the hikoi over the Foreshore and Seabed Bill that gave rise to the Māori Party started here. Media are on hand to capture this event, including local TV station Te Hiku. There is an extra connection to their presence. Te Hiku are a Kaitaia media group that was founded by Hone Harawira. It may come as a surprise to many that Hone, who is so often characterised in the media as a firebrand radical, is a media mogul who started a country and western radio station, amongst many others. It's no secret though, it just isn't covered.
I think a lot of them think that all I've done in my life is protest, but in the last 20 years, I've dedicated most of my time to doing two things. One, knocking something down if I didn't like it, and two, building something in its place that would prove that we could do it better.
We're here to see what Hone has built and if there might be any enduring political lessons. One of the reasons Hone has the mana to be MP because of what he has accomplished. There is Te Hiku with the TV and also the 4 radio stations, and in addition to media, Hone has fostered education from rudimentary beginnings.
They used to describe our kura as like the left bank of Lebanon. It was like rocks and broken concrete and everything, and that's all we had.
Over 20 years, Hone has helped create Te Rangi Aniwaniwa, Kohangareo, Kura, Wharekura and Wānanga. Both these areas are examples of his political philosophy.
The ethic behind it is simple, tino rangatiratanga. The ability to assert your sovereignty, to prove your ability to govern and to manage, and establish principles which will be valued not only by those you are in direct contact with, but hopefully others as well who see what it is that we're doing.
So, for Hone, the schools and the media group are political enterprises and exercises in getting the most out of limited resources. Here, Hone is in at Te Hiku for a chat on The Breakfast Show. The studio is proof that with a will, there's a way. Tony Strong runs the whole TV station. He edits, directs, vision mixes, and programs all at once. The equipment is low cost, but effective, like the studio shot that comes from a security camera.
It's not too often you get the opportunity to run a TV station, but to do it in your own town for the local people, it's just awesome.
Limited resources or not, Te Hiku has succeeded because it is truly linked to the community. Linked like this, Dion Hobson is down filming at the Dalmatian Hall. The line dancing troupe practicing here is run by his auntie, who used to do a show on Hone's country and western station.
My name is Little Trouble on the radio, and I've just this week given it away after 7 years.
I've come down to do a quick story on the line dancers and see how many are here and see my auntie basically, see how she's doing with her teaching.
This local knowledge is so important because Kaitaia has its own pace and perspective. It feels like another country, even to Hone.
Sometimes I feel like I'm a person from another planet, and it's one of the reasons I got involved in media up here, just so that we could ensure that at least our views were going to be heard.
So, for Hone Harawira, the power of media and business is inherently political. And in this distinct part of the country, there may be a political message for the election outcome. Seeing the success of the media outlets and kura here is seeing the success of tino rangatiratanga, which is public money used by private organisations to deliver local services, which is very similar to policies from the National Party. So maybe don't count any coalition options out just yet.
I must say that I'm a fan of the national philosophy of challenging Māori saying, look, this is what we think we can do. Are you up to doing it? And then the asset is on us. Are we? Are we? Or would we rather sit around on our ass and have somebody else look after us for the rest of our lives? Well, our view was we'd rather take up the challenge.
That report from Simon Pound. Lila, do you think that Simon was onto something there, and that the Māori Party maybe is not as estranged from National Party policy as it might first appear? They want to deliver their own services in places like that, don't they?
Well, they do, and I think that the Māori Party growth must feel very much like the original establishment of the Labour Party, that it's come from deep community structures, the education, the media, other forms of communication in a community, a bit like the Labour Party grew out of the trade union movement. So there's something really deep there, and I think, Labour's big mistake in relation to the Māori Party has been to do everything they can to kill them off in the 3 remaining Labour Party Māori seats. That's going to do damage, and it gives Māori Party every justification to be looking at working with National rather than putting their eggs in the Labour basket, and provided that National give them the freedom to develop that in a genuinely community-based way, they could very well, I think, work, reasonably well alongside them. The problem will be on the sort of more the broader, more ideological political issues, things like industrial relations, privatisation, stuff that affects all of us. They will clash, and I don't think National will get the Māori Party's support on critical parliamentary votes if it needs it to pass more right-wing legislation.
What do you think? Do you think that they will find an accommodation, Linda?
I think that it's probably not going to be necessary, but John Key has said throughout the campaign and before it that even if National was in a position where it didn't need the Māori Party, it would seek to come to some kind of accommodation. And I think, like Lila, there's a lot of room and actually compatibility, more so with Labour. I mean, the problem with Labour and the Māori Party is they are still competing for the same votes. And as the Alliance found when it was in Parliament and competing for the same votes as Labour, that is not a recipe for a happy relationship, because ultimately...
Well, Labour don't let it be the recipe.
Yeah, that's right.
And it doesn't have to be like that. Yeah. I mean, look at National and ACT, who are developing a symbiotic...
Remember, it was Tariana who said, we don't want the dole. It was the Māori Party that came out and said that, not National and ACT, who would have been crucified if they'd said it. And I think the Māori Party have gained a lot of respect, along with the Greens, for never indulging in the politics of personal attacks, and people really respect them for that. And even though, you say that National might not need the Māori Party, I personally think it would be good for the whole country if John Key extended across there and honoured the noises and the murmurs he's been making during the campaign. And the Māori Party responded to that because they both want the same thing for our people, as Tariana calls them, but they have sometimes slightly different ways of getting there. But I think that National will be better for the Māori Party than Labour will, because, as you said, they're going to... and the Māori Party will lose its identity if they go in with Labour.
Māori Party have to work with either or both. It's not a question of choosing a preferred partner.
Do you think they've also made themselves a viable coalition partner for either side by staying out of trouble? I genuinely thought Hone Harawira would come a cropper in his first 3 years.
They have not put a foot wrong.
He hasn't, has he?
They're very disciplined. They're a very disciplined party, and Hone has been one of the most impressive new MPs.
And I think
that
does come from that reality of what they're there to represent. I mean,
they're not there for the money or
the
mana or whatever. They're there to make the world a better place.
Right, well, we're going from Northland to Wellington again for the last time. It's time for one more course of lunch with the Spin Doctors. For dessert, we asked them to muse on what has changed in Wellington and what to do when everyone's a citizen journalist. You've all been involved on either side of the fence in parliamentary politics for a long time. How's it changed? Did it used to be more fun?
In a word, yes.
Yes.
A great deal more fun.
Yes.
You were waiting for him to say it.
Well, it was always a great deal more fun. It was a more, I suppose, collegial environment. There was
longer lunches.
Long lunches, less judgmental behaviour. When I first went there, you would share a meal with politicians. I'd be very, very surprised if anybody in that gallery now shares a meal. More importantly, I'd be very surprised if any politician feels it's important to share a meal with politicians.
Why is that the case? Why that change?
Well, they don't have time. I mean, there are huge demands now on them.
They're a different breed. The greatest change has been the advent of new technologies generally, have made a huge change to journalism, and the internet's the biggest one, of course. But also just little things like the modern cell phone. You know, it can be used as a recording device. You can take photographs with it. The secret tapes that English has been suffering from. And so those technologies are making politicians more wary.
What role do the blogs play? I mean, you read them every morning, didn't you?
I did when I was in Helen Clark's office, simply because increasingly the mainstream media are reading blogs.
And picking up lines too. You stole some of my lines.
Yes, Russell Brown, it was very good. and
Russell Brown get accused of recycling.
Boy, is he on top of things.
Exactly, who are his sources? But increasingly they are becoming sort of newsmakers and newsbreakers, and we've seen that in this campaign as well.
What kind of political era are we in now?
Oh, it's not fun for the media nowadays.
Look, I respect those guys there now. They work compared with us. I mean, Mike was just reminding me that on a Friday afternoon, lunchtime, we'd go off to lunch at Pierre's, which is then the great restaurant running, and they'd kick us out when they wanted the tables for dinner.
The sun was going down. Lunch hours were finished.
That's right. But we would have arranged beforehand that if anything was going to happen, we'd be tipped off where we were.
There'd be a runner come up with a clear stick.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right.
And you can do that. You can't do that now.
Yeah.
The guys are so committed. They work very hard. They work long hours. And I have a great respect for them.
It was very clubby. It was very incestuous in a way. It was a great deal of fun, but it probably wasn't in the best public interest. I'm not sure whether the other side of the coin is necessarily in the best public interest either. It's sometimes very ill-informed and often now driven by what's the excitement in the story rather than what's the substance in the story.
Yeah, what's the game?
Yeah, exactly.
So, to conclude, thoughts on the next 3 years? Everyone seems to be picking John Key.
He's going to do it, and as I said before, there's going to be a good partnership there with English knowing how to run the bureaucracy. So English will be the powerhouse in the cabinet, knowing how to control the bureaucracy and run it. And John being an extraordinarily good frontman, I suspect they'll go to enormous lengths to bring the Maori Party in as well, because that's the future. If they can do that, then that sets the scene.
That would be the ultimate testament to MMP, wouldn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
You don't even need to do it, but you do it because you know you need to make a line.
I'm not convinced Clark's done for yet.
No, me neither.
Well, I still think there could be a twist. There could be a twist in the tail of this campaign just yet.
That's a presumption on my part was probably.
There's various polls showing the two blocks are incredibly close. And it's not beyond the bounds of possibility that Clark could form a government, albeit slightly unstable.
So they're both very decent people. I think we'd be lucky to be served by either of them, really. I would suggest if the Maori Party does get involved with the next mix, it could be quite unstable. Not because of the Maori Party's proclivity to decide things on racial basis, but because for anyone running a country and running a government,
4 or 5 pieces.
Keeping all those pieces together will be unstable, and 12 months, 15 months down the track, I'll be amazed, even if Helen Clark can keep it together, let alone John Key.
That's right.
Well, should we book a lunch for this time next year then, shall we?
Let's do that. Hey, thank you, gentlemen. Cheers. It's actually been extremely enjoyable.
Good.
Very pleasant. Very pleasant.
Cheers. Linda, I saw you nodding when they were talking about how hard journalists have to work now.
Yeah.
I've also heard it said that you started that and you spoiled it for everyone.
Well, yeah, young women, they're terrible, aren't they? I was nodding because, I mean, when I started in the gallery as a young journalist, those guys were in charge, and it was fun for them, and it wasn't fun to be a young woman in the gallery in those days. Because you just weren't taken seriously, and because you had to do all the work while they all went off for lunch. And I guess that, I mean, there's a lot of glass ceilings have been broken over that time, but one of them was that I became political editor and Jane Young became political editor of TV3, roughly the same time. And we liked each other enormously, but we both had an absolutely enormous capacity for work. And I think we were partly responsible for making things get a bit more serious. But also, when I was at TVNZ and became political editor, we had one bulletin a day. By the time I left, you know, 8 or so years later, we had continuous bulletins, breaking news, live coverage, standing up all the time, instant analysis. Homes had come on the scene, completely different. And now, as you mentioned in there, you've got them writing blogs as well. It's full on for those guys.
I wonder if you two former MPs also feel that there is even less downtime now for members of Parliament than there used to be, and there isn't that boys' club thing either. It seems like you can never really switch off now.
I don't think there would be one MP that doesn't work really hard. We might not see what they do, but you just can't get away with it these days and not working hard. And you hear people say, oh, you know, we pay them all this money and they've got all these perks. Perks, you know, flying around the country all the time, that is not a perk, it's exhausting. But, you know, I loved Richard Griffin. I think it actually did more harm to his 3 marriages than the public being ill-informed with what went on in those days.
I think politicians are in continual campaign mode now, and that will be reflected in the workload of the media too, because they're not just commenting on the issues, but they're continually looking at the dynamics of the political lie of the land. And I'm sure MMP has contributed to that. It's not just a codey sort of trading of place between the 2 major parties. There's constant challenge. There's the need for intrigue all the time on how the numbers are being put together in Parliament.
Because when those guys were political editors, it was first past the post. You're exactly right. And as long as you had a majority in Cabinet, everything just sailed through. The rest of it was all done and dusted. You didn't need to talk to any backbenchers, to be quite honest.
We're almost out of time. I wonder whether I could have quick thoughts from all 3 of you on what kind of Parliament and what kind of politics we're looking at in the next 3 years.
I hope they take a cue from the McCain-Obama acceptance and concessionary speech. And I know that I'm probably too idealistic to hope that, but I think the public are sick of watching the debating chamber and the nonsense that goes on in there.
Well, assuming the latest polls are accurate, then I think National have an option here if they want to hold power for more than 3 or even more than 6 years, to expand the policy-making process well beyond the politicians and certainly well beyond the existing, the coalition they put together. There will also be a very interesting development in terms of, you know, Labour, the Greens and the Māori Party, who are, you know, the likely opposition, on how they choose to work together. And I think one of the big issues over the next sort of year or 2 is going to be who the Māori Party and the Green Party want to lead the Labour Party. They need to have a big say in that, because the future of Labour's future in Parliament as a government is going to depend on winning those 2 parties to their side.
And Linda, last word to you. 2 votes for a more inclusive, huggy sort of Parliament, really, wasn't it?
I don't expect there to be one. It would be nice. I mean, I think that National has not got a mandate. I think they'll do really well tonight, but they haven't got a mandate. This is a vote against Labour. What they need to do in the next year in particular is develop the grounds for a mandate so that they can win at the next election, and they'll do that by being inclusive. Well,
we'll see what does happen tonight, what unfolds. Thank you very much to our panel, Linda Clark, Lila Harry and Deborah Collington, and thank you at home for watching. You can join us at 9:30 on Wednesday night for an election media post-mortem, but for now, democracy beckons. Good night.